Hello, you people. I'm Doodle the Doodle Griffin. Now, if you're new here, I would like to let you know that I have OCs. And for those who are not new around here, then you already know. I have OCs. Now, usually what I do with these OCs is just kind of post silly animatics of them getting up to kind of goofy shenanigans, with the odd animation meme or lore video kind of sprinkled throughout. But I do have a greater plan for these OCs. You know, they're not just OCs. They, in fact, live in a fantasy world. So naturally, every fantasy world, especially a magical fantasy world, needs to have a magic system of some kind. Now, a little while ago, I asked you guys if you wanted me to explain, kind of in full detail, about this magic system that I've created for my OCs in this world. And the majority of you said yes. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. And when I say full detail, I mean full detail. This script is like it's like 5 pages long. So you might want to buckle in for this one. For those who don't know, basically what a magic system is, it just explains what the magic can or cannot do. You know, what the rules are, how it works, stuff like that. And it doesn't necessarily even have to apply to magic. You can actually use the idea of magic systems for other things, for like science fiction or even like superhero stuff. So it doesn't necessarily have to apply to magic, but in my case it does apply to magic because this is literally magic. But enough with me yapping, let's get into it. So how the magic works in this world is that first, it's not actually called magic, it's called Arcane. Why? Because I think it sounds cooler, that's why. And also that magic is very common in this world. It's not like something where it's like secret and only very few people know about it. Like literally everybody knows about it and it's been around for centuries. So I think it would make more sense if it, it wasn't just called magic, if they had like a proper name for it. But the main reason is because I just think it sounds cooler. Now the next thing you need to know is that Arcane isn't just one large power source. It's actually split up into 7 different power sources called major arcane sources, or Arcana sources. They can be used interchangeably. So since Arcane isn't just kind of one large power source, but indeed in fact several different power sources, wizards in this world discovered that only certain spells would work with only certain arcane sources. So the wizards of this world created a classification system assigning each major arcane source with its own class. Now these classes are called Fuego, Lucht, Trovāo, Aarde, Wai, Lyed, and Celestial. And the spells that would only work for certain major arcane sources, like pulling energy from that major source, would get put underneath these classes. Now before I get into more of the rules on how the spells work, I need to get into how each individual arcane source / class works. Starting with the Fuego Class. This class arcane source actually comes from fire, heat, and just thermal energy in general. Wizards who are from this class can actually perform spells that have to do with fire. This includes being able to wield fire. Now, as one becomes more experienced in this class of arcane, they will start to develop a high natural resistance to heat to the point where an expert Fuego wizard can shake off 3rd degree burns. And there has been some rumors that there was once a wizard who was so strong in this class that they were able to control lava. Next is the Lucht Class. Now the Lucht's arcane source comes from the wind, air, and sky. Wizards of this class are able to create more than just a light breeze. Very strong wizards are able to summon entire windstorms and tornadoes. Users of this class are also able to reach higher altitudes without losing their breath or getting faint. The Lucht class is also one of the only 2 classes / arcane sources that can perform spells that involve sound. The Trovāo class is certainly an electrifying one, but that is mostly because the Trovāo class arcane source comes from electricity. This class can perform spells that use lightning and thunder, because it's also the other one of the only 2 classes, / sources that can perform spells using sound, just like how the Lucht class can. Wizards of this class can develop a natural resistance and even outright immunity to electricity. Masters of this class summon entire thunder and lightning storms and also develop almost lightning fast reflexes. Next up is the Aarde Class. Now this class arcane source actually comes from the ground and flora. This class is one of the most versatile classes in that not only wizards can move rocks and grow plants, but they can also bend metal as well. However, a downside is that they must have access to the materials in order to be able to cast these spells and manipulate them. So they just can't make rocks and plants just appear out of nowhere or, like just create shards of metal. They have to have access to these things. A master wizards of this class are able to split the ground and even grow forests within days. Next up is the Wai Class. Now this class's source comes from the water. Users of this class can manipulate water in various different ways. Strong wizards can control large amounts of water and pressurize it to cut through rock and even change the flow of river and ocean currents. Legend also has it that there was once a wizard so strong that she split the sea in two. Because of this, it's considered to be one of the strongest classes. However, it does have its drawbacks. Like the Aarde class, in order to use water spells, you need to have access to the source, and the water has to be in its base form. That means it can't be mixed with anything, so no blood bending. It is physically impossible to control blood. I do not want to deal with that kind of can of worms, so we're just, impossible. That also means no ice, and I will explain what I mean by that when I talk about the next class. The Lyed Class's arcane source is the very primal essence of winter in the north itself. And when there is winter, there is ice and snow. Ice and snow actually fall under this class, with wizards being able to create spells with those in it. Wizards of this class are also more resistant to colder weather, with experienced ones being able to dip in the most freezing waters without even getting a chill. Some say that highly advanced wizards are also able to drop the temperature of the atmosphere in limited areas and time. Last but not least, we have the Celestial Class. Now, a lot is not known about this class because it is a very rare arcane class, and it's actually only been an official class for around 20-ish years or so, compared to the other 6 classes which have been around for centuries. In fact, it's so rare that arcane that comes from this class was thought to be either fake or from supernatural reasons. The Arcana source of this class is thought to be from the cosmos itself, aka space. From what is known so far is that wizards from this class are able to create, spells that either control light or shadow, and are also able to make them physical as well. This class actually used to be 2 separate classes at one point in time, the Sol and Luna class, due to the fact that wizards are only able to either, control light or shadow. However, due to more research, it was proven that the Sol and Luna class actually come from the same arcane source. Proven by that both classes had almost an identical spell list, and there was also a person who was able to both wield light and shadow. It seems like, for now, that the only reason why most wizards from this class can't both use light and shadow is because once you learn one, it's kind of hard to learn the other. It's not impossible to learn both of them, it's just kind of hard and difficult to do, and it also boils down to the wizard's kind of interest and personality as well. It also comes down to the different styles on how to wield them. Both how to wield light and shadow arcane is kind of difficult because they have different styles to them, even though they're technically 2 sides of the same coin. But not much else is known about this class or what its full extent is. Now that you know how classes work individually and what makes them all unique, I'm going to talk about how classes and spells work as a whole now. I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'm just gonna kind of reiterate it now, just so maybe hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense now that I talked a little bit more about the classes. But every person is born with the ability to use arcane from one of the 7 classes/sources, which means they are only allowed to perform spells that are within their class. And this is a physical restriction sort of thing. Arcane classes cannot overlap. For example, a person who can perform spells from the Fuego Class cannot perform spells from any other class. So no water, ice, air, etc. Just spells that use Fuego Arcane. You also can't choose which class you can draw arcane from. It's just kind of something you discover along the way and also have to deal with too. However, there are just some kind of general arcane spells that every class can do. These spells just need any arcane to work, not a specific kind. These spells can range from basic ones like barrier spells to more advanced ones like tracking. Spells also have different levels to them that can range in difficulty. So for an example, a level 1 barrier spell is a very simple spell to use and is often used to teach to beginners, but like a level 10 barrier spell can prove quite challenging. Also, even though these general spells just need any arcane to work, depending what arcane that person has will also change a little bit how the spell works. So for an example, let's just use the barrier spell again. A person who's part of the Wai Class, their barrier spell is going to look a lot different than someone part of the Fuego Class, because they're essentially using water arcane to make the barrier instead of someone that may use like fire arcane. It is also possible to enchant objects to do very specific tasks and have different abilities, with the difficulty of enchanting the object ranging depending on how complex of an ability or task you want the object to do. Now, there are more restrictions to arcane than just what arcane can physically do. There are also legal restrictions created by the people of this world. First and most common being that you cannot use, arcane or magic unless you have a license to do so. Wait, I know what you're gonna say. Well, maybe not all of you, but some of you, I know definitely some of you are gonna say, didn't you say earlier that everyone was born with arcane? No, I said everyone is born with the ability to use arcane. In order to use an arcane, a person has to be taught how to use it. And in order to learn how to use it, you have to go to a school that teaches arcane. And graduating from one of these schools automatically grants you a license to use arcane. However, a person's license can also get suspended and or taken away. If a person misuses arcane or breaks too many laws while using arcane, they can get their license suspended temporarily. Basically, a person has to wear this bracelet that stops them from using arcane for a certain amount of time, and then it gets taken off. These bracelets are also used for students who are learning how to use arcane to keep them from, using arcane when they're not supposed to. The ones for the students, though, are slightly different in that they can be shut off in designated arcane gyms at the school, so students can practice on their own time and they're not always kind of reliant on learning it in class, with of course one of the school faculty members supervising the gym to make sure no one accidentally blows it up. If a wizard commits a more serious crime, or if they commit too many minor-ish crimes, they can actually have their license taken away. This means they'll have to wear the bracelet indefinitely. They can get their license back, but depending on the circumstance, it can range from just having it retake certain courses like ethics and safety, to having to take those classes on top of doing a bunch of community service and or jail time. For the most extreme cases, like if a wizard commits a very serious heinous crime, they would actually be made to forget how to use arcane entirely. By using a forget spell, the knowledge on how to use it would be entirely erased from their brain, and they would also be blacklisted from ever learning it again. But that's only for the most extreme cases, you would have to do something really messed up to have that happen to you. Now, it is possible to learn arcane without having to go to school. One of those ways is, to just teach yourself how to use arcane. However, there are a lot of problems with it. For one, a lot of the knowledge on how to use it is very much restricted. It's easy enough to learn how to do just the basic spells and enchantments on your own, but if you want to learn any of the cool stuff, you're gonna have to do a lot of underhand methods to get that knowledge. It is also still illegal to do it this way because you're not learning from an officially licensed school or anything, and you also won't get officially licensed. However, learning on your own is not entirely uncommon to find. In fact, quite a few parents who know how to use arcane will teach their kids before sending them off to an arcane school to give their children a bit of an edge against the competitions, because these magic schools can be pretty competitive. Touching back to the underhanded methods, black markets, crime rings are also a way to learn arcane, especially if you want to learn spells with a bit more, edge to them. But if you're wanting to learn those more advanced spells, you'll have to find and talk to some pretty sketchy people. And of course, these methods are still very much illegal, and if you get caught, you'll be in very big trouble, but then again, that's only if you get caught. For this last part, I'm going to be talking about something called Forbidden Arcane. Now, Forbidden Arcane is exactly as it sounds. It is arcane that is, well, forbidden. Forbidden Arcane is basically spells that are illegal no matter what class of arcane they are from, and the use of these spells can almost guarantee a removal of an arcane license. How to determine whether if a spell is forbidden or not is if it falls under one of two categories. Spells that either alter the mind or body. If a spell can alter a mind in any way, it's forbidden to use. And the reason for this is what I believe to be fairly obvious. If you're wanting to change how someone thinks or like alter someone's mind in any way, it's usually not for a good reason, like 9 times out of 10. And also, mind spells can cause some serious psychological distress and trauma, so that's also another reason why they're forbidden. Victims of mind spells often have to go to psych wards to get help. The only good thing is that these spells are temporary and can be reversed, which is more than what I can say for spells that alter the body. Body-altering spells are spells that can chant in a person's body to do different things depending on what class of arcane that person is. Body spells are also not like the natural resistance to certain elements that a wizard can gain just by using their class. So if you remember what I said, that Fuego users can naturally gain a resistance to heat. No, that isn't like that. The resistance, that is a completely natural thing that happens just by using your arcane class. Body spells physically alter a person's DNA when it's cast, and unlike mind spells, these changes are permanent, and they're also very sudden too. These spells are also very hard to perform and can easily go wrong, causing, permanent disfigurement. And since these spells alter the body, they are extremely painful to go through, because having your entire DNA changed, just like that all of a sudden, is not something that is going to be painless. Now, these spells may be permanent, but that doesn't mean they can't be treated. Victims of body spells go to these special institutes to be treated, where experienced doctors and wizards come up with spells that counter these spells, making it more bearable for the victims. There are 2 names for people who have been affected with, these body-altering spells. These names are enchanted or cursed. These names can be really used interchangeably. The only difference is if a person chooses to be enchanted, then they're called enchanted. But if they didn't choose to have the spell cast on them, and it was forced upon them, then they're usually called cursed. It mostly depends on how the person kind of views it. Body spells also leave some sort of permanent mark on a person. I'm going to use one of my characters as an example here. Question Schwadu is one who has been cursed, and he is one of the lucky ones in that his, enchantment is actually pretty cool. He is a part of the Celestial class, and his enchantment was the ability to turn certain parts or his whole body into a shadow. Whether it's just a normal shadow or a physical one, he can do both. The mark that the spell left on him is actually his eyes. Unlike everyone else, Question's eyes, whites are actually black and his pupils are white. And all of this is from the spell that was casted on him, so that's why his eyes look like that. And this is also why he's either wearing a mask or really dark sunglasses, just to hide the fact that his eyes make him look like a demon. And well, the spell also kind of gives him perfect night vision, making his eyes really sensitive to light. A forbidden mark also looks different for each spell too. This is just what it looks like for Questions. Also, since these spells change a person's DNA, that means they are also hereditary. So if someone who was enchanted has a child, they will pass that spell on to their children. People whose parents were enchanted and or cursed are actually called Arcana Blooded. The reason why they're called Arcana Blooded is because since their parents passed on the spell that they were enchanted with onto their children, the Arcana Blooded. So essentially, the arcane is kind of already pre-baked into their blood. Hence why Arcana Blooded, Arcana in their blood. Arcana Blooded also have a naturally very strong connection to Arcane than other people do, and they don't actually need to be taught how to access it. It just kind of comes naturally to them. So because they have Arcane kind of baked into their DNA, a fair amount of Arcana Bloods tend to be self-taught wizards. However, because of their Arcane comes more naturally, it also tends to be more wild and chaotic and harder to control. It is especially crazy when an Arcana Blooder experiences a very strong emotion of any kind. Arcana Bloods also don't have a visual mark on them. Well, technically they do, but it isn't always visible. So you know that forbidden mark that I talked about a little bit earlier? Yeah, they still technically do have it, however, it's not visible all the time. It's only really visible when they're either A, using their spell, or it's either B, they're especially sensitive to some sort of like kind of arcane presence. But even then, that's not really all the time either. However, since forbidden arcane is, well, forbidden, Arcana Bloods are very rare to come by, and if you do come by one, you'll most likely not even know they are one. For Arcana Blooded people are very secretive about their abilities. This is because Arcana Bloodeds are a byproduct of, well, a forbidden act that their parents / ancestors took part in. People who have either been cursed and or enchanted themselves are often, you know, kind of barred from having children to begin with to prevent the passing of the forbidden spell. So for those reasons, Arcana Bloods are usually very much shunned from society, and that is if they don't mysteriously disappear first. Because if you remember what I said, Arcana Bloods are very rare. And it's because they're so rare, they are considered to be valuable in certain markets. So if you're picking up what I'm putting down, then you know. And it's because of those two reasons that Arcana Bloods tend to remain very secretive about their abilities. Now, there are some exceptions to when it comes to Forbidden Arcane. However, they come with like caveats to them. These exceptions are the Forget spell and also healing spells. The Forget spell is the only exception to when it comes to mind spells because it's used for the reasons I explained earlier. And the only people who are allowed to use the spells are high-ranking officials whose job is to make sure these criminals forget how to use Arcane. Also, they don't bother using the spells on criminals who have been enchanted themselves because the Arcane's kind of now baked into their DNA, so there's really no point in using a Forget spell when it's literally now like a part of their body. Healing spells are the other exception to this rule. Healing spells are body spells because they are used to heal the body. But just like all body spells, if not performed properly, it will do the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. That's why the only way for someone to learn a healing spell is that they have to be a doctor on top of being a very experienced wizard. Because of that, healers are often extremely rare, and even then, they don't use healing spells unless it's like a last resort, because body spells can easily go wrong. A miscellaneous thing that Arcane cannot do is affect souls, and emotions are a part of the souls. So Arcane cannot change how a person feels. For example, love potions. They do exist in this world, and they're also highly illegal. But despite their name, they cannot make a person fall in love with another person. They can only make a person act like they're in love with another person. The victim of a love potion does not actually feel love. It more so makes a victim obsess over another person. So a more accurate name would be a potion of obsession. You know, one thing I also forgot to add that when using and like learning Arcane in general, it's sort of like a muscle. So you gotta build up to like lifting that 50 pounds. If you try to lift that 50 pounds right away, you're gonna pull your magic muscle. You're gonna get a wizard cramp. And you know, you're just gonna make yourself tired in general too. And there we have it. That is my magic system in full detail. And oh boy, that was a lot. When I first started writing this, I did not think I had this much to say about my magic system. You can clearly tell that this is something I've been thinking about for a while now. World building is one of my favorite things to do when writing because it's just so much fun to do, and I'm really proud how this turned out. However, keep in mind that this is still a work in progress story, and there may be some things that might change. But I do really like how this works overall, so we'll have to see how this turns out later. But I'm gonna have to wrap this up here. Now, I know this is way longer than the videos I usually make on this channel, but I'm not gonna apologize for that because you saw the length of the video when you clicked on it, so you knew what you were getting into. But either way, I just want to thank you for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. And also, let me guys know if you're interested in more of this kind of content of me just kind of rambling about different parts of my stories. I had a lot of fun making this, and I will literally take any chance I can get to info dump about this world and stories that I've been building. So just kind of let me know if you want to see more of this. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you all later. Goodbye!